So we are kind of turning the picture a little here. So the first one is a guy named James Montgomery. And he wrote a little song that is sung all over the world today, still every Christmas. But that's not why he's on the list. He's on the list because of his music publishing. He was born in 1771 in Ayrshire, which I have no idea where that is. Do you know?
Ayrshire. Is it Ayrshire?
And where is it?
It's north. It's
In the north?
Yorkshire, probably.
Yorkshire Moors. 1794 becomes editor of the Sheffield Register, later called the Sheffield Iris, which I thought was cool. And of course I thought of the Sheffields with it. Now, James Montgomery had a bit of a social gospel concern himself. He was jailed for sedition for publishing a poem speaking favorably about the fall of the Bastille in 1795, which I thought was kind of cool, because remember, England still has a queen, and someday England will have a king. And so here's this guy writing this poem, this ode to killing off the royalty in France, and they threw him in jail for sedition.
George III wouldn't like to.
1796, he was jailed for publicly criticizing a local magistrate. No Bill of Rights there. 1797, he published Prison Amusements about his experiences in jail, which I thought was kind of cool. 1806, he publishes a 6-part poem entitled The Wanderer of Switzerland, which Lord Byron himself commented on how brilliant it was. 1809, he published a 4-part anti-slavery poem called The West Indies. You don't have people writing these really lengthy poems anymore, do you? You know, like Paradise Lost or Inferno. You don't have people doing it. 1816, he writes a little, writes the words to something called Angels from the Realms of Glory, and at first is printed in his own newspaper. So if you're an aspiring author, the best way to be able to get your work published is to own a newspaper or the publishing house, whatever, and then you publish it. 1817, he wasn't done with his social concerns. He published a poem criticizing the use of children as chimney sweeps. And it was called The Climbing Boy Soliloquies. And I thought that was kind of cool. It seems a very targeted social issue, but I'm sure they were.
But they're small, they can climb up there.
And they can climb up. But they were also probably
Squeeze in
getting
the
black lung and dying from it, so I can understand the concern.
Well, they get smaller ones.
1820, now we're kind of getting into the reason that he's on the list, because you might be scratching your head so far. Well, he sounds like it was nice, he was interested in all these social issues, but that's not why he's on the list. Reverend James Cotterell publishes a selection of psalms and hymns adapted to the services of the Church of England with the assistance of James Montgomery. So this is his beginning in the hymn publishing business, which is why he's on our list. 1822, Montgomery publishes Songs of Zion, being imitations of psalms. So he publishes basically his book of psalms that you could sing the songs. 1825, he sells the Sheffield Iris to a local bookseller, but he publishes the Christian Psalmist or hymns, selected and original, and also the Christian poet or selections in verse on sacred subjects. So he's really into this hymn publishing business now. 1853, he publishes original hymns for public, private, and social devotion. 1854, he publishes sacred poems and hymns for public and private devotion. So he is in here because of his publishing efforts. And he dies in 1854. An English editor, publisher, poet, and hymnist. It's a statue of him in Sheffield. Championed a lot of social causes, including the abolition of slavery, and he crusaded against the use of children as chimney sweeps. He wrote over 400 hymns, which is a lot. Doesn't put him up in the pantheon. You figure Charles Wesley wrote around 9,500 hymns. Fanny Crosby wrote around 8,000. So he's not up in the very stratosphere. But 400 hymns is a lot. And the most famous hymn is Angels from the Realms of Glory, sung to the tune of Regent Square by Henry Smart. And this is a good time to mention that, something on that. A lot of these people who wrote hymns, either they wrote the words to them or they wrote the music to them. You typically didn't have people back then being songwriters in the way we think of them today. You know, Lennon and McCartney, they wrote the words and they wrote the music. Back then, typically you either wrote the words and then you used some popular tune to put them to. Or, if you look at a lot of the hymns we have in the hymn book, it will say, you know, music by Franz Heide or music by Beethoven. You know, joyful, joyful, we adore you. Well, obviously the music was written by Beethoven. So, this is a good example of somebody, he generally wrote the lyrics, he didn't write the music. And it was a good, it was a marriage made in heaven when Henry Smart and James Montgomery got together to create Angels from the Realms of Glory as we know it today. Still popular in England, I'm told anyway, is Hail to the Lord's Anointed. But the reason he's on the list isn't because of Angels from the Realms of Glory, it's because he published several hymn compilations, which included not only his own works, but works from many others. And we've got to remember that back then there wasn't an internet, there wasn't a television, there wasn't a radio. So the only way to pass songs on to the next generation was to publish the music to them. So that's why the publishers, you see that I give a lot of attention to publishers of music in the 1600s through the 1800s. So I really focused a lot on that.